Good morning to you, Landon. Really fun topic today. We're talking the release of HBO Max and kind of the excitement around that. And I'm interested to see it in terms of, is HBO still seen as kind of that king of content, providing, these must see, TV series, things like Game of Thrones, things like Entourage back in the day? Or has Netflix taken that throne and, HBO's kind of a story of the past?
Sure. Hey, don't leave out Sopranos if you're going to go back in the day. That's a great HBO show as well. But yeah, it's, HBO Max just launched and it's kind of a confusing package that they've got going on. They've got HBO Go, Now, and Max. So they've got three different, I guess, services. And there's a lot of confusion that's being caused by this, but there is also a lot of people that are wanting to get in. If we look at the number of people who are signing up or talking about these services, it's actually a pretty big spike when you look at HBO Max coming in, and it's not quite what Disney Plus's launch was. Disney was about 5x, 5 times as much, but there is a good pickup for HBO Max, who HBO really didn't have a lot of chatter when you compare the two, and Netflix is doing extremely well. HBO Max didn't even quite get to where Netflix is now, so that kind of answers your question about who's still king. But this is a very successful launch for them in terms of getting people on. However, there's also a lot of frustration because they did this special. So it's $15 a month for HBO Max. And they did a special where you can, if you pre-order for a year, it's only $12. And you had to sign up, I think it was before Wednesday. And then basically right before it launched, they let you know that it was not available on Roku or Amazon Fire devices, which caused a lot of frustration. And you can actually see that happiness was hurt on Roku and Amazon Fire. People who were talking about those devices were unhappy with not only HBO, but those devices as well. And so that was a bit of a struggle for HBO Max. We compared Disney Plus's launch on happiness. It was about 79% happy. HBO Max was 71% happy. So you can see here the providers. Guess which one of those three is the one that you can get HBO Max on? You can get it on Apple TV. You can't on Roku or Fire TV. And so that's causing a lot of frustration for people because they pre-ordered, they have a Roku or they're using Fire TV, and then you tell them that they can't use those devices right now. I think that HBO is working on getting those in, but not yet. And so that's causing a little bit of frustration in those not only again HBO Max, but also those two other companies. So kind of a rocky start for the launch and a little bit of confusion because of the various offerings that they have.
Landon, this is a pretty big miss by them in terms of not getting the Roku and the Fire TV part of it right. And, it almost feels like they weren't as organized as they should be, and besides the fact, correct me if I'm wrong, they came in at a fairly high price point than some of the other names. And, HBO is not known as the happiest place on earth. Disney is. So HBO's got a lot of way to go for their image to get up, even though they are known for quality television. But you also know it's all about the pipeline for them. So, this is going to be interesting how it plays out. But that Roku Fire TV story, that's a pretty big miss. And that's something they've got to get figured out pretty quickly. Don't you think, Landon?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a miss. You got to have your ducks in a row when you're launching a huge service, especially
Right.
as you're saying, it's $15 a month, which most of them are nowhere near that. I think Disney can even be around $5, and Netflix has packages around $7. So, $15 a month is very high. Again, you pre-order for $12 a month. You're committing $144 for a year. And then they tell you at the last minute, oh, by the way, if you want to watch this, you need to go buy a different device because you Roku guys it doesn't work for you. Now, it's not just Apple TV. They're on Xbox, PlayStation, Chromecast, a few other devices. But, Roku is a huge one to not be on. Fire TV, maybe not so much, but Roku is really big. And so for that miss, I think it's just rubbing people the wrong way. Plus, they were already confusing people with they have HBO Go, HBO Now, and now they have HBO Max. It's just it's a lot to figure out and for the average consumer. And yeah, it's just causing a lot of frustration for people.
Yeah, and Landon, I know HBO Max includes more than just kind of what an HBO Go or an HBO Now includes, which is part of why it's probably a little bit more of a premium price point. HBO's always been a premium price point, though that's kind of been their MO. So it doesn't surprise me that they come in a little bit more expensive. But is it possible, to your point, though, that the buzz around this, excitement around this on the release is because, one, I haven't heard of any, brand new shows that they're going to come up with that have caught my eye, but more so that, people already can stream HBO through HBO Go, and where something like Disney, that was the first time that you had access to all of that library in one place.
No, I think that's a great point. You don't know what's the show that I'm getting on HBO Max that I can't get on these other ones that I may already have. So I think that's big. I know that some of I think Friends and Big Bang Theory are on there. Those have a pretty big following, so that might bring some people in. But you're right. I think that they need more original content, and that seems to be always what we say about new providers or about providers in general, is that content is king. Even Disney Plus sort of struggled after people got on and they rewatched all their favorites, and then they said, okay, now what? I had one season of Mandalorian. I need something new. Now, HBO does have a lot of great series, but can you get them on just HBO Go already through your subscription with DirecTV or whoever it may be? So I think that people are just not quite sure exactly what they're getting, and I think content is absolutely king. But an interesting point, we actually saw a spike in sales or at least people talking about buying Apple TVs because that's the one. So there's sort of a sentiment when we dug in and read the tweets. The sentiment was sort of, well, I already prepaid for HBO Max. It's a little frustrating that I don't get it on Roku, but okay, I guess I'll go buy an Apple TV now. So it's kind of helping Apple indirectly. It's kind of an interesting little phenomenon that we're seeing.
And we've often pointed to, Roku really doesn't have that kind of room for error that a company like Apple has, just given that this is their primary business. And, let's be honest, there's not a lot of barriers to entry for it. So probably not a good thing for Roku, but I'm sure they're going to work on getting that hammered out and iron out those details with HBO Max. But when you're talking about how this impacts AT&T, then this is kind of seen as one of the few things that could potentially be a growth opportunity for the wireless carrier, which we know those telecom companies, it's pretty steady as she goes, pretty consistent earnings, usually seen as more of a defensive dividend stock. Is this potentially going to be something that weighs on AT&T from what you're seeing, or is this look at something that could be, potentially monstrous in terms of how AT&T grows from here?
It's such a big company. I mean, I don't want to say drop in the bucket, but this is just such a monster company. I would love to see the breakdown on revenue by division and just see where HBO falls in that conglomerate. I think that it's really going to come down to, if HBO is going to be a game changer for AT&T, it's got to be bringing in droves and droves of new customers. And the only way they can do that is with compelling content that you can't get on the free services. So they have to be coming out with some great shows, which, you open the show talking about a lot of things that they do, right? There are some fantastic HBO shows. They have created a lot of great ones. So I think that is something that they're capable of doing. If they really bring it and only put them on HBO Max, I think people will sign up. And I really think eventually, probably within a week or two, they're going to figure it out with Roku. It's just such a miss. I guarantee they're on calls right now trying to work out the deals. They've got to get it on there. And probably a week or two goes by and we forget that they weren't on Roku initially. And it's all about whether people like the service because there's new content coming in.